My mom used to tell me that being meek would make people take advantage of me. I never believed her. But it seems she was right. Suddenly there was a loud bang on the door. The door banged so hard that it was clear it's not a friendly visit. I got up and walked to the door, quite fearful. When I opened the door, I saw the landlord. "I'm glad you're awake," the landlord said. I glanced at him and then lowered my head before replying. I wasn't. You hit so hard it scared me. But he shook his head and said, "Yes, it does not matter. Listen, this morning a package is going to arrive at my door. When it arrives, I need you to receive it and leave it in my office. Is that clear?" I said, "Mr. Reynolds, I can't. Today I have things to do." The man smiled and looked at me mockingly. He said, "Like what, Steve? What do you have to do?" "I have an interview for an internship. I can't be late." He looked at me in disbelief. I frowned when I saw his reaction. Maybe he didn't even know what an internship was. He looked at me and said, "Another thing like that? All your life, are you going to be chasing that useless dream? You're not going to achieve anything, Steve. Give up! People like you are good for manual jobs. And that's it. Remember that interview when you were rejected by the car company? Or the city hall? You're not going to get a job because you're a loser. They shouldn't hold that against you, but you are." Despite feeling frustrated and angry, I still lowered my head and said tightly, "If we don't try, we'll never get out of the bottom. Maybe I'll have some luck." He laughed and said, "People can be lucky. For you, however, if you were to be lucky, you would surely find a way to screw it up. Don't do or say stupid things. Stay here and receive my package. I'll give you something later." I watched him leave. I couldn't believe what he was doing. He had already decided that I would not succeed. It was like, regardless of what I did and said, it will remain that way. I went into my room again, feeling lost. How could he think that way? A few years ago, I was 18 years old and had just entered university. I was sure that my life would take a new direction. I could definitely move on. The treatment that everyone gave me was not the best, but I could ignore it. While I was in the library, someone approached me and asked, "You're Steve, right?" The girl was beautiful, and I couldn't believe that she had spoken to me. I was sure that she would simply ask me the time or ask for an address. However, to my surprise, she sat right in front of me and asked, "Do you mind if I sit down?" She was already sitting down. It wasn't like I could tell her that I didn't want her to. Honestly, I wouldn't either. She was actually lovely, but perhaps dumb for even talking to me. Still, I thought I might have a chance. She then stared at me for a while, which made me feel uncomfortable. Before I could ask, she said, "You're the Steve who's applying for a job at Jobs Electronics, right?" Jobs Electronics was the first company founded by my hero. My hero was one of the most famous men in the world, Arnold Jobs. I smiled and nodded. "Do you really think a guy like you will get that job?" she asked while looking at me curiously. When I regained my composure, I smiled and replied firmly, "If we don't try, we won't know it, right?" She laughed mockingly, then shook her head and said, "No way! We do know, even if we don't try, you won't make it. But do what you want." I thought she would give me some kind of advice or something, but in the end, it seemed like she was just like everyone else. She got up from the table, and I, not understanding in the least why she had done that, grabbed her wrist and demandingly asked, "Hey, why did you do that?" She glanced at her wrist and then back at me. She shook her hand quickly, making me release my grip. She sneered and asked, "Why did I do what?" "Coming here! Sitting at the table talking to me just to tell me I'm no good at all! then I'll not achieve what I want. I mean, what do you gain from it? She laughed once more, louder and full of taunting. Then she replied, What do I gain? I don't gain anything. What's wrong with telling a dog that he's a dog and that he will always be a dog? And with those words, she left. I don't know and have never known how people see me, but clearly the image I must project is terrible. Just then, my cell phone rang. Hello, Karen? How are you? I answered. Come find me. I had to do some shopping and I'm too lazy to go alone, she immediately said without even greeting me or checking how I was. I can't. No matter what you have to do, you're not going to make it anyway. Come find me, she interrupted, clearly not listening to my words. I walked towards the closet and mumbled, Who the heck do they think they are? Angry, I opened the closet and took out my suit. I left my house, going straight to my interview with determination. I was already near the place of the interview when Mr. Reynolds called me. I answered, and he immediately spoke in displeasure. Listen to me, you useless boy! The package arrived and you weren't there! No one can really count on you. You're really useless! I don't care where you are! Come get your crap because you're leaving! Without answering anything, I simply hung up. The entrance to the latest company of Arnold Jobs was in front of me. As I entered, my phone rang again. I sighed and then answered. Hello, Karen! I'm sorry, I cannot... Don't bother coming to work anymore! You're obsessed with following that nonsense. That won't get you anywhere, and when someone needs you, you're not there for them, she angrily said. I couldn't believe what she was saying. I tightly replied, Karen, it's my day off. You're going to fire me? But no one answered. She had already hung up. Hey! Isn't this Mr. Broken Dreams? What are you doing here? This is no place for charity. I turned and looked at her. She was laughing at me. I glared at her and yelled, Get lost! I was angry, but I should not be late. So I entered the building. At that moment, the door opened and they called my name. I felt excited, worried, fearful, and some other emotions I cannot explain while being in front of my hero. Before I could realize it, I was already sitting down. Your friend said some things about you, Arnold's Job said. I looked at him, and without knowing why, I smiled. He looked at me and shook his head. He was going to write something down in the notebook, but I just blurted out, She is not my friend! The man paused and looked up. He said with a smile, She said she was. I intensely stared at him and replied, So what? People lie. I bet you lie, but that doesn't matter. Because no matter what you say, whether you're lying or telling the truth, no one can tell you the truth about yourself except you. Right? The man stared at me and leaned back in his chair. He asked, What are you talking about? All my life, I was a loser. Everyone told me that was it, and there was no escape. Something terrible to say to your friend, don't you think? That wretch who came in a second ago simply spoke to me once to tell me that I wouldn't achieve anything. And you know something? For a while, I began to believe it. But screw her! And screw everyone! I'm gonna be successful, even if I have to do it alone, without anyone's help! Oh, darn. Me speaking like that felt so good. Arnold's eyes brightened and his smile widened before he said, You? Are you going to be successful? No matter what I say? I was terrified, but seeing him, I decided not to let anyone else trample on me. And with that, I nodded without taking my eyes off him. He got up and adjusted his suit. When he reached out his hands towards me, he said, That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Welcome! Your life is going to change drastically now. While I learned the business, the company would give me housing and everything I needed. Arnold smiled as he looked at me. He said, "You remind me of myself at your age. No one trusted me, but I trusted myself, like you. So this time, I will trust you, and I assure you that all those who treated you badly will regret it." We talked for a long time, and really, he and I had more in common than I thought. When I left the office, the woman who belittled me was waiting. She looked at me with a smile. I smiled back at her and said, "Mr. Jobs wants me to say thank you very much for coming, but the position has been filled." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "How is that possible? That can't be!" I frowned and replied, "Hey, keep your voice down, okay? We don't like scandals in our company. Thank you for coming. Have a nice day." It seemed she could not understand my words, so she arrogantly marched towards Arnold's office. Unsurprisingly, Arnold Jobs called for security. After the security arrived, they dragged the woman out. When I returned for my things, Mr. Reynolds was waiting for me. I arrived in one of the company's luxury cars. Mr. Jobs made it easier for them to help me move to my new place. When I got off, Mr. Reynolds saw me and asked in confusion, "What happened? What is that car? Where are you going?" I looked at him and said, "I got the internship. I won't live in this place anymore." Mr. Reynolds looked in all directions and tried to understand what was happening. Seeing him like this, I shook my head and said, "I appreciate you not holding the fact that I'm a loser. I promise I'll do the same to you." He looked at me, but it seemed like he did not know what to say. I waved him goodbye, then rode the company car once more. Just then, my phone rang. I answered, and Karen immediately said, "I'll give you one more chance." "Karen, don't call me anymore. You don't have to fire me. I quit." I interrupted her. She burst out laughing and replied, "Where are you going to work if you quit, stupid?" I brightly said, "With Mr. Arnold Jobs, but I appreciate what you did for me." Karen tried to speak. Are you going to work with... Karen, I can't talk. I'm going to follow your advice and work hard without wasting time on useless things. That's why, goodbye.
Please don't forget to share this podcast on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and so on. Thanks for your support. Check out our YouTube channel by clicking the link in this episode description. And also, kindly please rate and review this podcast. Bye.